recorded for those who can't attend. So you should get a prompt. So if you agree, you just have to click continue on your screen. I'm sure this isn't your first Zoom session since we are now virtual, so I'm sure you're all starting to get used to this. So welcome to this session for newly admitted international students. My name is Natalie Morris. I work at the International Office and I'm in charge of International Student Support Services. And I'm joined with my wonderful team here, which I will soon introduce to you. But before we begin, I just want to go through a little bit of information. So this is going to be today's session. So we're going to be talking about, what is the upcoming year going to look like? A bit of information on admissions, immigration, which is travel restrictions, all that fun stuff, quarantine, which is changing. So we have a bit of updates to share with you today, and then next steps. It is going to be a very short presentation, and I want to focus mostly on your questions because that's our goal today, is to respond to maybe your main concerns or questions. So let's get started and let's introduce ourselves. So I will follow up. The first person I see on the screen here is Manal. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, so my name is Manal. I'm from Morocco and I'm an international mentor from the International Office. I'm studying in mechanical engineering and computing technology. And just to introduce ourselves, so we are a team of 5 mentors during the summer, more mentors in the academic year, and we help students and assist them with their questions regarding the Canadian culture, the academic or like university life, etc. So if you have any questions or like concerns, you can talk to us and we can help you or either refer you to the services who can help you.
Excellent. And did you want to just go quickly through the other mentors' names?
Yes, for sure. So I'm responsible for the region of the Maghreb and the Middle East. We have Mia, who is with us today, and we also have Dia, Samriti, and Melissa as well.
Great, thank you. So some of you might have already been in contact with the mentors. So Manan will definitely be there at the end of the session to answer any question you may have as well. So I'll continue with Marc-André.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marc-André Goujon. I am the manager for Asia for the International Market Development Team. It will be my pleasure today to present the admission slides. I'm joined today by 2 of my colleagues, Philippe, who is the manager for Africa, and my colleague Martin, who is the manager for Europe and Latin America. And we're also joined, we have the pleasure of being joined by our colleagues, 2 co-op students, Marianne and Rebecca as well. So it is possible that you've been in contact with Philippe, Martin, or I, or even maybe our co-op students for some of your questions you had related to admissions. And we look forward to answering your questions today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll continue with Alexandra.
Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening. So I work as an international student advisor at the International Office, along with my colleague Ali, who's not in today's session, but he's the other international student advisor. And I'm also a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. So happy to be here today and answer your questions about immigration.
Thank you. And last but not least, Joshua.
Hi everyone, my name is Joshua Jasperson. I'm the Student Safety Abroad Advisor and I lead the quarantine support team for the university. I'm joined by my colleague Jason. He's listening in today. And right now we're a team of 2, but we're gearing up to add a few more people as we get ready for quarantine. And I'm here to answer your quarantine questions today.
Thank you, Josh. And I did not mention, we do have other colleagues on the back end. So you might see my colleague Camilla, who's the coordinator of support services and the supervisor of the international mentor team. And we also have Mia, our other mentor, who's going to be managing the questions in the back end as well and helping us with logistics. So there's Camilla. Thank you. Okay, so I just want to run through quickly did I forget anybody? Sorry. I don't think so. Okay, I think I have a good memory this morning. So I'm just gonna run through quickly how the session is gonna function. So we're gonna go through the short presentation, followed by a question period. Feel free to ask your questions in the chat. If you wanna wait until after each section, because we might be actually proactively answering some of your questions with the content that we're presenting today, based on the emails we've been receiving, we kind of put this together as the most commonly asked questions lately, although I know you probably have a lot more. And then afterwards, during the question period, you'll be able to answer you'll be able to ask your questions directly to our panelists as well. And if the chat function doesn't work for you, you can also lift your hand and you can ask a question orally, and we'll do so in the Q&A period. So let's begin. So we're going to start with the academic year. So I know this is something that is a little bit different than what we normally do, but it is year 2, so we're getting a lot better at it. We were just chatting this morning how virtual presentations are kind of becoming second nature to us since last March. And one of the main questions we've been getting is, will courses be offered on campus in the fall term? So the aim is to have about 30 to 50% of the courses on campus and then the remainder online. So students will be able to take one course in the fall, one course in the winter at minimum, and maybe even more depending on your program and your course availability. And in order to do so, every classroom has the ability of having simultaneous video conferencing in-person teaching. So that's something that's new. We used to have it in a few classes, but now it's everywhere on campus. And then some courses you'll see they're hybrid courses. So sometimes you'll be taking the course online, sometimes you'll be taking the course in person. So that's something that already existed, but it has just been increased with the current situation. And then even if there are changes after the beginning of the term, so let's say things really improve and we're able to increase our capacity, students will be able to be a little bit more online, or if things worsen, a little less online. So we really have that flexibility of being virtual or in person. And if you do want to do your courses completely online for your first term, for your first year, so up until winter 2022, that is a possibility as well. So a lot of flexibility since the beginning of this situation. And I am seeing a few questions coming directly to me. If you can put them in the general chat, that way my colleague can see them and we can put them in the queue to be answered during the Q&A period. So please don't send direct messages, but messages in the general chat. If you do have a confidential question that you don't want to ask in the general chat, you can definitely send us an email and we can answer after the session as well. So I did already kind of touch on this. So definitely if you are wanting to do it entirely via distance learning, or let's say you don't have your study permit and you have to do it entirely online, that is a possibility. That being said, it might impact your course sequence. It could affect the length of your studies, but most students are able to do so without too many problems, especially if they're registering early on. So in mid-May as an example. And for some courses though, there isn't a flexibility. So let's say a 4th year nursing course or a clinical placement, mostly for upper year students, there is a bit less flexibility, but I would say there's a lot of flexibility, especially for 1st year students. So how to check if your course is offered online or in person. And there's also the hybrid model that I mentioned. So at the bottom of the screen here, if you click on, so you go to your UOZone, you click on My Class Schedule, you select the term. So for example, the fall term, then you're going to see every course that you've enrolled in. And when you click on class details, then you can see the instruction mode. So I don't know if you can see my mouse, but here it says instruction mode, web conference, location virtual, and then campus would be off campus. So it's quite clear whenever you click on the class details, if the course will be in person, hybrid, or completely online. And if you do begin a course online and then it opens up in person, you can choose to continue to do it completely online. So again, a lot of flexibility there for the next year. So this is another popular question that we've been getting lately. We do have some updates coming as well. So will students be required to get vaccinated against COVID-19 before returning to campus? So no, it is not a requirement. That being said, we do encourage students living outside of Ottawa to get vaccinated, first dose, and if necessary, your second dose before coming to the university. That being said, only the vaccines approved for use in Canada will be administered on campus. And then again, for travel recommendations, my colleague Josh will give you a bit more information on that. Although we don't have the full details yet, we should get some details later on, probably in the summer. So probably by July, we should have an idea of what that will exactly look like. So let's move on to admissions. So Marc-André.
Hi again, everyone. So congratulations again on being admitted to the University of Ottawa. So what are the next steps in relations to your admissions? Well, you'll have to submit your final documents in order to confirm your admissions. And the deadline is July 15th. So we will accept your final transcript directly by email from your institutions if they are sent at admissions@uottawa.ca. So that means that your high school or your university or college can send the transcripts directly to the admissions office via email. It does help if it's sent by an email that includes the an official email from your school. You can also mail in the documents, the official transcripts, and there's the address for the admissions office. You will not be penalized if on your transcript you have pass or fail grades, and that's fine. That's something that we've seen a lot in many countries, here as well in Canada. It's something we've offered to our students as well at the university. So the candidates who receive a pass grade for prerequisites will be considered, as having completed the prerequisite requirements. We will grant advanced standings for courses that receive a pass grade as well. So I hope that answers your questions regarding the pass or fail grades that some of you may have received on your transcript. Next slide, please. So accepting your offer is very important. If you're not sure about accepting your offer, you can always accept your offer now. It will help you register for your courses. And you can also decline later if you change your mind. So that's always an option as well. So accepting your offer does not require you afterwards to pay tuition right away. It will simply reserve your spot in your program and allow you to register for your courses. And again, important to note, you can change your mind afterwards. If you're having any difficulties accepting your offer, please do not hesitate to write to the admissions office at admissions@uottawa.ca. So deferrals for admissions. I think that's a big question that's top of mind for some students who are still hesitating on whether they want to pursue their studies. So at this time, it's still too early to submit your request to defer your offer of admissions. Before you plan on doing so, make sure that you accept your offer of admission and that you have satisfied all of the admission conditions that are specified on your admission offer, which is available in your UOZone account. So this has meant that if you are a high school applicant, you will proceed with your request once we've received your final grades and proof that you've obtained your high school diploma. If you are granted the deferral, you may not attend any educational institutions during the period of your deferral. So you can't take any other high school courses or post-secondary institutions, so university or college courses during that time. Please note that offers to our English intensive program are not eligible for deferral. So if you've been admitted with the condition of completing the EIP, you cannot apply for deferral. So you will be able to start requesting the deferrals starting July 1st. Please review the procedure for requesting a deferral of admissions on the Admissions Undergraduate Studies website. Please note that requesting deferral does not guarantee that this will be accepted. So that's important to note. I think that's it for me, Nathalie.
Yeah, thank you, Marc-André. So we'll move on to immigration. Alexandra.
Great, thank you, Natalie. So yes, I know this is a hot topic. So we tried to collect all of the information based on the questions that we've been receiving from students so far. But I do want to start with a little bit of a caveat. The information I'm giving you today is current as of today, but as we've seen over the past year, things can change very, very quickly. So it's possible that by the time you listen to this recording, some of this is no longer accurate. So always make sure to consult official resources, the Immigration Canada website, for example, for the most up-to-date information, because it will likely change on you. So I wanted to start with the study permit application itself. So as you know, Immigration Canada, IRCC, had given a deadline of May 15th. If you submit a complete study permit application by May 15th, they would guarantee a decision by August 6th. So yes, that date has come and gone, but what I want to emphasize is that IRCC is still continuing to receive and process applications. There's just no longer a guarantee that you'll get a decision before you start your program. But if you haven't applied yet, and I hope you have, but if you haven't, just please go ahead and apply as soon as possible so that your application is in the queue to get processed. You must apply online due to COVID-19 closures. The visa offices, visa application centers are not accepting in-person or mail applications, so it has to be online. And as we know, because of the pandemic, the processing capacity it might be limited, and it could be worse in some countries versus others. So I would anticipate delays if I were you. They are still being processed, and we are seeing some file sharing within the IRCC network. So for example, we had Indian students get decisions from Ottawa. So it is happening. There is still processing, but there might be delays because of COVID. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. So if you haven't applied for your study permit yet, we did create a tutorial earlier this year that goes into a lot of detail about how to apply. It is a long tutorial, so definitely make sure you have a nice cup of tea if you're gonna sit down and watch it. We did add some helpful timestamps in the description of the video in case you wanna skip ahead to certain parts where maybe you have questions about the application process. And the PowerPoint presentation itself is also available in the description of the video on our YouTube channel for download. So definitely would recommend checking that out if you haven't already and if you haven't applied yet. One thing I wanted to highlight, because it is something that causes confusion for students, because you're applying online, the documents that appear in your document checklist sometimes do not include all of the documents required by your visa office. So it's always important to go check the visa office instructions for your country. And any of those additional documents that are required from your visa office must go in the client information section of your application. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Another element that we wanted to quickly touch on is the student direct stream. So if you are a legal resident in one of the countries you see on the screen right now, you do have the option to apply through the SDS stream. It has stricter document requirements. And the kind of trade-off is that you are supposed to get a decision within about 20 calendar days of submitting your application. I will say with COVID, again, that 20 days is mostly being respected, but not always. So you are by no means required to apply through SDS. It is entirely optional. But if you do want to apply through SDS, one of the requirements is to prepay your tuition fees for your first year of studies. So if you are required to do that, as you know, the tuition fees, I think we've seen they have been set now. They're the same as last year, but they still haven't been added to your account because that only happens after enrollment in your courses and all that. So what you need to do if you want to prepay is actually estimate your tuition fees using the university's fees website. So we kind of give some guidelines here on the slide about how to go about estimating your fees. And then basically you get that estimate and then you make a payment using one of the accepted methods of payment. And again, we have a hyperlink there that tells you if you're sending money from from abroad, what methods are accepted by the university. So you send your payment, and then it takes a few days to process the payment and have it appear in your student account as a credit. And then once it appears in your credit, that's when you can download your receipt to include in your study permit application. If you are a legal resident in one of these countries, you should have already received an email with instructions on how to do this. But I just wanted to mention it because some of our students do opt to apply through this stream. Okay. Missing documents. So obviously with the pandemic, sometimes it can be challenging to obtain certain documents. One example that comes to mind is a language test or a police certificate. You know, due to COVID-19 closures, you might not be able to include some of these documents. What we are encouraging students to do is to go ahead and submit their study permit application, even if you are missing a document. However, what we recommend is that for each document that you are missing, you include a letter of explanation that explains why the document is missing and proof of why you can't obtain it right now, if that's available. Obviously, with incomplete applications, there is always a risk of refusal. However, what we've seen so far is that students are being granted extensions. They're being sent a request to provide the missing document and given a deadline to provide it. So we're not seeing refusals for incomplete applications so far, though, like I said, it is always a risk. But where students did explain and provide proof of why they can't obtain it, we are seeing some flexibility there. Once you do have the missing document, you should use the IRCC web form in order to send this document to the visa office so that they can add it to your application. Or if you've received a request directly from an IRCC officer asking you for the missing document, you'll be able to upload it directly using the link that they provide. Okay. So we've talked about, you know, applying for a study permit and what to do if you're missing documents. And we've talked about processing times and how they could be very long. So one question we get all the time is, okay, what if I don't get a decision before September? Like, can I still start my studies? Can I still, can I still study? So yes, is the short answer. So a study permit is not required when you're taking online courses if you're physically outside of Canada. So if you are still waiting for your study permit application to be processed, you can still study, you can still start your courses online. Where the study permit becomes absolutely required is when you want to travel to Canada and take courses in person, for example, or even study online in Canada. As soon as you're inside Canada, you need to have a valid study permit. The other thing I wanted to mention in terms of study permit, because this is a question we get a lot as well, is okay, so let's say I do apply for my study permit and I start studying without it. What about my post-graduation work permit? Will the time I spend studying online without a study permit count towards the eligibility and the length? The answer is yes. So for now, if you have a valid or approved study permit, or even if your study permit is eventually approved, your postgrad work permit eligibility is unaffected. So you can complete your courses via distance learning right now up until the end of December 2021. We might see this date be extended. We've seen it before over the past year. It just continually has been extended so far. So we don't know for the winter yet, but for now, we're happy to confirm that there's no impact whatsoever on your postgrad work permit if you study online inside or outside Canada for your work permit. Obviously, if your study permit is not accepted, then the time spent studying wouldn't count towards your work permit unless you reapply for the study permit and that application is eventually approved, then it would still. Okay. So speaking of refused study permit, so obviously, as hard as we try, you know, there is never a guarantee that RACC will accept your application. Evaluation of study permit applications are quite strict, and officers do have their discretionary power to make decisions on these applications. So there's always a chance that your application is refused. We're giving you a helpful link here on that you can read in your own time on how officers assess study permit applications. That can be helpful to keep in mind. for your application, but some of the most common reasons for refusal that we've seen are insufficient ties to your home country, financial insufficiency, and job prospects in home country. So a lot of this related to financial capacity. So when you apply for a study permit, you are required to demonstrate that you have the means to support yourself while you're here. And how IRCC interprets that is, you know, if you're coming to Canada by yourself, you need to have at least $10,000 Canadian, the equivalent of $10,000 Canadian, and enough money to pay for your entire first year of tuition fees. So getting a study permit refusal based on financial capacity means that they have doubts about your ability to cover those costs, basically. If we can go to the next slide, we talk about what happens. So let's say you do get a refusal for either one of the reasons that we just spoke about, or another reason even. You basically have three options or scenarios following a study permit refusal. So option one would be to reapply for your study permit if you feel like you were able to overcome the reason for refusal. And obviously this will depend on what the reason was. So your situation must have changed considerably since your previous application, and you have to be able to obviously address the reason for refusal. We do have a tutorial on that goes into a lot more detail on how to overcome a refusal. So I would recommend that you consult it if you become in this situation. The other option would be to finish the term without reapplying. So as we already mentioned, you're not required to have a study permit if you're studying online outside Canada. So even if your application is refused, you could still finish the term, get those U-Ottawa credits, and then decide what you do after that. The final option would be to drop your courses before the deadline for reimbursement. So for the fall 2021 term, that deadline is October 1st. So if you receive a study permit refusal before October 1st, you are able to drop your courses, request a refund, and do that. Yeah. Okay. Switching gears now in terms of travel restrictions. So we've kind of talked about study permit application. Now we're going to talk about, can I travel to Canada? So obviously, I'm sure it's no surprise to any of you, but there have been and there are still travel restrictions in place. And we've been seeing these travel restrictions be extended sort of on a monthly basis. And there's also right now, in addition to the travel restrictions in general, there is a flight suspension from India and Pakistan. And so far that's until June 21st, but again, that might be extended as well. So right now, the travel exemptions for international students are, you need to have a valid study permit or a letter of introduction that shows you were approved for a study permit. And you must be attending a designated learning institution or DLI that has a COVID-19 readiness plan approved by its province. U-Ottawa's plan has been approved. So if you are an international student and you are enrolled with the university, you've been admitted, you're enrolled in courses, and you have a valid or approved study permit, you fall under the travel exemptions, the exemptions to the travel restrictions, and you could travel to Canada. Now, as I mentioned already, these travel restrictions, exemptions, they're subject to change at any time, so definitely always consult the IRCC website for the latest information. And then we also have our frequently asked questions that has a section just about travel and like what documents to have in mind, and your testing, your COVID-19 testing obligations as well, both pre-travel and post-travel. So definitely consult our FAQ for more information about that. The other question we get related to travel to Canada is, when should I travel to Canada? This is definitely a hot topic for us. So right now what we're seeing is that if a student is not enrolled in the summer term and they're traveling more than 4 weeks before their actual courses start that they are enrolled in, there could be a risk that you're denied either boarding or denied boarding at your connecting flight, or basically entry to Canada. So it's a little bit challenging for us because the government of Canada has not given clear or acceptable dates for travel. They're really leaving it up to the discretion of border officers and airlines to interpret. So what we've seen is some students have been successful in traveling to Canada, even if they're not enrolled in the summer, and others have not. They've been denied. So what we're recommending is, if you're traveling more than 4 weeks before the start of your classes, so you're not enrolled and your classes start in more than 4 weeks from now, we recommend that you have documentation available to demonstrate why you have to travel early. So for example, let's say you're having difficulty finding a flight in August, or a hotel or a quarantine facility. Definitely have documentation on hand that demonstrates that, so that you're able to, it'll help you demonstrate why you need to travel at this time and not later. Obviously, final decisions for entry to Canada are always determined by the border officer and or the airline at the port of entry. But that's our general guidance for now. And I think that's everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Alex. So if you have any admission questions, course enrollment questions, or immigration questions, you can start putting them in the chat, and then we're going to follow with my colleague Joshua on quarantine.
Thanks, Natalie. I'm going to talk a little bit about quarantine, just as Zoom was foreign to us a year ago and we had to get used to it, quarantine has become part of international travel over the past year. So the quarantine support team is here to help you and to guide you. And so let me just go through some of the top points about quarantine. At the moment, all travelers, or pretty much all travelers to Canada, must be tested for COVID-19 within 72 hours before traveling to Canada. And once you arrive in Canada, you must spend at least 14 days in quarantine. It's currently a 14-day quarantine. Currently, there's only 4 airports which are approved to receive international flights into Canada. So that's Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, or Calgary. You may be able to book a ticket directly to Ottawa, but you will get off at one of the 4 airports first, have to go through quarantine procedures and stay at a hotel there for up to 3 nights before you can come to Ottawa. So that's a question we get a lot. I'm booking a flight to Ottawa, how does that work? Yes, you can book a flight to Ottawa, but you'll have to stop and spend your first 3 nights in a government approved hotel before you come on to Ottawa, or elsewhere. You can quarantine pretty much anywhere in Canada. It doesn't have to be in Ottawa if you have friends or family or people you know here. So once you're tested, you fly to Canada. Once you arrive in Canada, you're tested again as soon as you arrive. You then go from the airport into a government approved hotel. You have to book and pay for that in advance. And then as soon as you test negative on your arrival test in Canada, you can proceed to Ottawa or wherever you're going to spend the rest of your quarantine, the balance of your 14 days. So as I said, you don't have to, so for your 11 days, you don't have to quarantine necessarily in a hotel. You can quarantine with friends, family, in your own private residence. In fact, we recommend that. You can share with other people. However, you need to have your own room. The people you share with must consent that you can quarantine with them, and you have to keep away from them. As with immigration, the rules change frequently, so please make sure you're checking with the latest Government of Canada guidelines before you plan your trip. You must register your quarantine plan with the university. Although this isn't legally required to travel to Canada, the university has an agreement with the Government of Canada, and this allows us to be on the list of institutions that can receive travelers to Canada at this time. So if you don't register, students will not be able to travel to Canada. So we have a registry on our website, please check it out. We also have a website that gives you guidance, the broad points that I'm mentioning here about how to plan your trip, and the register itself helps you to plan your trip. And as I mentioned, the rules can change anytime. Last week, the government, and this is exciting news for some of you who maybe have access to be fully vaccinated soon, the government announced that starting sometime in early July, travelers who are fully vaccinated by a vaccine approved in Canada should have a reduced quarantine. We don't have all the details soon yet, but they should be available soon. We do believe that this will apply to international students or those who are currently eligible to come to Canada. And the way it should work is that you will test before you come to Canada. You'll test again when you arrive in Canada. You will be able to skip the mandatory 3-day hotel and proceed directly to your final quarantine location. And you should be able to leave that quarantine location as soon as you have a negative test result. So like I said, we don't have many details on that. There's currently 4 vaccines approved for use in Canada, and that's Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca or Covishield, and Janssen. So if you can be fully vaccinated by one of those 4 vaccines before you come to Canada, you should have a reduced quarantine. Just a few pointers that could help you. The government approved hotels, most of them are non-refundable. A few of them are. So we don't recommend that you book and pay for them too far in advance in case the rules change. You are able to change the dates, but they're non-refundable. So I would advise you to wait a bit until you're sure of your plans before you book that hotel. Another thing is that if you test positive or there's a delay in getting your test results, which I forgot to mention, sorry, if you're doing the full 14-day quarantine, there is a test at home. You're given a kit when you arrive in Canada, and you do another test on day 8 when you arrive in day 8 of your quarantine. And you need to send those results. A courier comes and picks them up at your residence, and you send them off to a laboratory. You need a negative test result from that day 8 test before you can leave quarantine. So it's not a matter of just spending 14 days. You also need a negative test result. So occasionally these results get delayed or you test positive. And you'd be surprised how many students do test positive. You might have been careful before you come to Canada. You've tested negative many times along the way. You have no symptoms, but we've had many students who test positive still towards the end of their quarantine. And this means you have to extend your quarantine for another 14 days from your test date. So please keep this in mind. Don't be surprised. We're there to support you, but you will need to remain in quarantine for an extra 14 days. So have that in mind and have a backup plan in place in case that happens to you. You're responsible for paying for your own quarantine. The university does offer some quarantine packages, some of which are more affordable than others. But this is part of your trip to Canada and is required by the government, so be prepared to pay for your quarantine. Quarantine cannot be done, if you're moving into housing and residence, you cannot do your quarantine in your room. You have to do quarantine outside of your room before you're allowed to move into residence. University of Ottawa has done very well at preventing outbreaks on campus, and that's one of the reasons for it. Like I mentioned, there are several quarantine packages. If you do not have your own place to quarantine or you can't make your own arrangements, there are several quarantine packages available by the university. We offer you a room, we offer you food, and those details are available if you check out our website. We just posted them in the last week, and you can see which ones could suit you if you need a place to quarantine. As I said, you can make your own quarantine plans as well. You can quarantine anywhere in Canada, basically, but we recommend that you do it close to Ottawa, especially if you're coming here for classes, because we have a much better network here than, let's say, if you were to do it in Toronto or Montreal. We have relations with the local public health authorities. So if you do have challenges or problems, it's easier for us to help you. So that wraps it up for quarantine, and I look forward to answering your questions later.
Thank you, Joshua. I already see some questions coming in, so stick around for the Q&A period. So I'm going to wrap up the presentation. I just want to go over quickly some of the more administrative side of things. So what are the next steps? So to get started, there is essential tasks that you need to complete. So you already received the link, but just quickly, so getting your student card, getting your bus pass, adding your meal plan. So those are all things that you can complete either during the pre-arrival or the arrival period, depending on the task. Some of the things, definitely course enrollment. So I don't think I've mentioned it, but it began on May 18th for first year students, and it will soon begin for grad students. So if you haven't enrolled in your courses, please do so as soon as possible. As mentioned by Marc-André, you do have to accept your offer of admission in order to enroll in courses. And there's a lot of resources out there. So We sent you emails with instructions. There's video tutorials on the enrollment website. There's enrollment help webinars that were offered by the international mentors and regional mentors that are very helpful. There's also an FAQ on that website. And after going through all that material, if you still have questions, you can definitely reach out to an international mentor and they can help you. They are international students themselves. They've done enrollment. They might not be in your specific program, but they have an idea of how it functions. And to give you a general idea, you should have about 5 courses per term if you're following a normal course sequence or a suggested course sequence. So 5 courses in the fall, 5 courses in the winter. That means that you're a full-time student. So 10 courses per year for 4 years for most programs. And you do have to enroll for the fall and winter. So sometimes I'll see students will only enroll in the fall and they'll wait for the winter. But then whenever they get to November, the course is already full for the winter. So definitely do both right now. And then usually in March, if you're enrolling for the summer, and then again in May to June, if you're enrolling for your second year of studies. So that will come a little bit later on. And there's also the enrollment support webpage, like I mentioned, that has all those tutorials. So I forgot to mention it maybe at the beginning, but we will send you a copy of the recording, of the PowerPoint, and those links are clickable, so you'll be able to explore as well. And for housing, if you haven't secured housing yet, so the deadline for guaranteed housing for newly admitted students was June 1st. You should be hearing back by the end of the month if you did have guaranteed housing. If you don't have guaranteed housing or you haven't applied, you can still apply. And now it's being given on a first come, first served basis. So again, there is kind of that sense of urgency to apply for housing on campus. And if you prefer, you can also live off campus. And there's an office within the housing office to support you with that. So what neighborhoods, what are the typical prices, what to look out for, scams. For example, you should never sign a lease before seeing the apartment. So all that is on their website and the link is there in the presentation. And you can reach out to them if you have any specific questions about housing on campus or off campus as well. So tuition fees is one of the common questions that we've been getting lately. So for Canadian residents and international students, the fees will remain the same as in last year and the year before. So there has not been any increases in terms of tuition fees. That being said, there will be a slight increase, so by less than 1% for incidental, ancillary, and administrative fees. So that's like sports services, your health insurance, all those things, there is a slight increase. And in terms of the actual fees, they'll soon be updated on the university fees website. So they've just been approved by our Board of Governors and they'll be soon uploaded. That being said, the calculator is only an estimate. So whenever you do get your actual e-bill, that will be at the beginning of August, that says for you in your program, in the courses that you've selected, this is the price. But you can get a very good idea of what the amount will be by using the calculator. And then when do you pay your tuition fees? So the deadline was pushed back last year, again this year. So the deadline for fall 2021 is October 1st. So there is still lots of time. And your statement of account, will be available 1 month before the start of each term. So usually you pay for by October for the fall and then by February for the winter. So it's really by term separately. And again, if you're applying with the SDS from one of the countries listed on the PowerPoint, then you need to pay a year in advance. And we've sent you instructions by email. If you do have any questions or you're having any challenges, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can either help you or refer you to financial resources that can look into it for you. So the methods of payment, there's many. That being said, if you're paying from a bank account outside of Canada, there's 2. So you can either use CIBC International Student Pay or Western Union Global Pay for Students. So this is a bank-to-bank transfer through a third party. One of the common mistakes I see is that people will physically go to Western Union. You don't actually go to Western Union. What you do is you print your PDF and you bring your Western Union PDF or your CIBC PDF to your bank. So it's really done through your bank in your country. And then Western Union's the third party that transfers it from your bank to the University of Ottawa's bank account over here. And even if they're billed in Canadian dollars, you can pay in the currency of your choice. And there's detailed instructions on the student accounts website, which explains step-by-step exactly how to do it. Do not wait until October 1st. I would definitely get started a little bit ahead because it can be tricky the first time that you're doing it. So I would at least try to do it 2 weeks before the deadline. That being, so if ever there's any issues, you're able to fix the issues before the deadline. And the date of payment that is on your receipt is the date that the university will respect as your date of payment. So let's say you pay on October 1st, but then the payment is only in your account on October 7th. The university will still respect that you paid it on October 1st in your bank. But do not wait until the last minute. Pay a little bit in advance in case you have any issues. So the next thing that is coming up, so after our sessions that we're offering today, the next big thing is definitely U orientation. So there's a faculty webinar. So depending on which faculty you're in, it will be between July 8th and July 15th. And then afterwards, all the services offers different webinars. So for example, the International Office, we do have webinars that are specifically designed for international students. I do strongly recommend attending. So for example, Experience UO Global, which is an attestation and an excellent program. I do strongly recommend it for all international students. And Immigration 101. So Alexandra and Josh will be giving updates on traveling to Canada, what you can do with your study permit, your work authorization, as well as quarantine, adapting to a new country and culture, and also Am I Covered? Explore the University Health Insurance Plan. So UHIP is specific to international students, but there's also sessions that are open to all students on your additional insurance. So health and dental, so medication, the dentist, optometry, that kind of stuff is with your additional insurance. And as always, the webinars are recorded. If you can't attend live, I know time zones, it's very tricky to find a time that works for everyone around the world. So every single session will be recorded. And if you attend live and you forget something or you want to rewatch it, that's a really added value that we've discovered with these virtual sessions. Afterwards is Welcome Week events. So that's usually at the beginning of September, a lot of sociocultural activities. There will be a lot of virtual opportunities, but also in person. Of course, if the public health measures permit it. And we do have a huge event for international students. It's called the International Virtual Hangout. Last year, we had about 500 students. It's really fun. You get to meet students from all around the world, and Canadian students are also welcome to participate. And our social media, you can get updates. So our Instagram, UOttawa_international. Our Facebook is UOttawa Bureau International Office, again with the bilingualism. And we do have a new MS Teams group. So UOttawa International 2021-2022. So premier cycle undergraduate students. So those are all the undergraduate students that were admitted for the fall 2021 term and winter 2022 term. You can really get to network with the students that are in your cohort, maybe from your country, from your program, and ask questions to your mentors. So we already have about 130 students that are participating, asking questions, and we'll be proactively posting information in that through that medium as well. So MS Teams is Microsoft Teams. It's a new tool that we've just gotten, and we've really ramped up using it during the pandemic. So you'll be using this potentially to have appointments with people on campus, to communicate with staff, with your professors, with your colleagues. So get to know the tool. As of now, we use it every day to work, and it's a wonderful tool. So I think we've given you enough information. Let's begin the question period. So if all the panelists can just return to the screen, I'm just going to open the document here. So if you have any questions, now would be the time to ask your questions in the chat. And if your chat doesn't function again, you can also lift your hand. We will be taking a few questions orally as well. I'll unmute your mic if you lift your hand so you can ask your questions. So without further ado, let's begin with immigration. So this would be for you, Alex. So first question, how to extend my study permit while in Canada if I change to a new university?
Yeah, so if you already have a valid study permit, but it'll expire soon, there's 2 steps you need to take to update IRCC about your new university and also extend the validity of your study permit. So the first step would be to change your designated learning institution in your IRCC account. There is a link that I can put in the chat about how to change that in your account. I'm just going to put it right now. So that would be step 1, is to update your designated learning institution in your IRCC account. And then it will be applying for a extension of your study permit. It's an application that you would submit online again and from inside Canada. And we actually have a tutorial, and I know Camilla already put the link in the chat, so I'm not going to put it again. But we do have a helpful tutorial that goes through step by step on how to extend that study permit. And if ever you have questions after consulting the tutorial, definitely feel free to reach out to us. You could schedule a one-on-one advising appointment if you want to go over your application with an immigration advisor, for example. So maybe if Camilla or Miha could put our email address in the chat, that's where you would email to book a one-on-one advising appointment, or send your questions by email as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, and now I'm just seeing in the document some of the answers were already given in the chat, so I'm going to try to focus on the ones that were in the chat.
No problem.
So here's another one, a fresh one. So if I applied for a study permit for my first year, but I decide not to travel to Canada for my first year of university, will my study permit expire, or is the permit eligible until you graduate from the course?
Yeah, so I guess just to kind of backtrack a little bit. So when you apply for a study permit online, and the application is approved, you're given a letter of introduction, which is a letter confirming that your permit was approved. On that letter, the validity of your study permit should be indicated, and the letter itself should have an expiry date on there. Now, with the pandemic, what we're seeing is that the expiry date of the letter is the same as the validity of the permit, so it should be whatever date that is. Ideally, it would be till the end of the program, but not always, for a number of different reasons. So it would be, you would have until the date on that letter to travel to Canada and present that letter to an immigration officer to receive your study permit. So yeah, that's the answer for the validity of the letter.
Thank you. The next question is about traveling. So would my parents be able to travel with me? They have visitor visas.
Yeah. Under normal times, I would say yes, absolutely. However, with the pandemic, we are seeing some issues. We've seen some students be successful in having one or two parents accompany them, but it is definitely a bit more complicated right now with the pandemic. Basically, the official guideline that IRCC says is that if you need help to get settled, only one immediate family member is supposed to travel with you to come help you settle. If you're a minor child, they shouldn't need a written authorization from IRCC to travel with you. But if you're not a minor child, and in Canada, the age of majority is 18. So if you're 18 or older, we do recommend that and you want to come with a parent, we do recommend that they try to get their own travel authorization from Immigration Canada to avoid any potential issues with boarding and traveling. I will put a link in the chat here about requesting a specific travel authorization. There is a special form just for this. I would recommend that you do that, and then maybe schedule a one-on-one advising appointment with us if you do have additional questions about that. But that is the official guidance. So normally only one immediate family member if you need help to get settled. And if you're not a minor, there could be issues. So we would recommend try to get your own travel authorization for your parent if that's the case.
Thank you, Alexandra. So the next question, I believe the person had their hand up, but now I don't see them. Just give me 2 seconds. Daouda, est-ce que vous avez encore une question? Okay, I'll wait until maybe Daouda, if you still have a question. Oh, there you go. You can go ahead. Oops. Go ahead.
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Oui, je me présente, je suis Soro Daouda. Je suis originaire de la Côte d'Ivoire, en Afrique de l'Ouest. Récemment, j'ai obtenu une admission pour l'Université d'Ottawa et c'était le 3 juin 2021. Bon, là, je suis dans un processus d'immigration pour le Canada et depuis décembre 2019. Donc, ma préoccupation, est-ce que j'ai cette possibilité, vu que je suis dans le processus d'immigration Entrée Express, un travail qualifié fédéral, est-ce que j'ai cette possibilité de refaire encore une demande d'études, enfin une demande de permis d'études? Donc, pour un visa d'études pour la session d'automne 2021, est-ce que c'est possible?
Oui, donc c'est vraiment deux processus entièrement séparés, différents. Donc, même si vous avez un processus d'immigration en cours de traitement, rien ne vous
D'accord.
prévient de soumettre une autre demande de résidence temporaire pour un permis d'études. Je pense qu'il va falloir déclarer que vous avez une demande de résidence permanente en cours, mais autre que ça, vous pouvez procéder avec faire la demande pour le permis d'études. Je confirme que vous aurez besoin d'un permis d'études jusqu'au moment où vous êtes confirmé résident permanent. Donc, c'est le traitement des demandes de résidence permanente peuvent prendre très longtemps et certainement même plus avec la pandémie. Donc, vous aurez besoin d'un permis d'études jusqu'au moment où vous êtes confirmé résident permanent.
D'accord. J'ai une deuxième préoccupation. La deuxième, c'est est-ce que si je n'arrive pas à obtenir le permis d'études à temps avant la rentrée scolaire, est-ce que je peux demander un report du début des cours pour la session prochaine, c'est-à-dire l'hiver? Est-ce que c'est possible? Puisque j'ai déjà accepté l'offre d'admission.
Oui.
Oui, donc Daouda, comme j'ai indiqué durant la présentation, ces demandes pourront être effectuées à partir du 1er juillet. Donc, les demandes pour différer l'admission peuvent être faites à partir du 1er juillet.
OK. D'accord. Merci.
De rien.
Et peut-être juste pour ajouter rapidement, pour les droits de scolarité, aussitôt que vous avez reçu votre approbation, que votre demande est complète de IRCC, vous pouvez demander pour un changement de vos droits de scolarité. Donc, vous devez le faire avec InfoService. C'est eux qui déterminent c'est quoi votre statut légal pour vos droits de scolarité. Par rapport si vous n'avez pas un permis d'études, comme ma collègue Alexandra a mentionné, si vous êtes à l'extérieur du pays, vous pouvez étudier en ligne sans un permis d'études. Donc, vous n'avez pas besoin de différer, mais c'est votre choix si ça vous va ou non, dépendamment de votre connexion d'Internet, le fuseau horaire, etc. Je sais que ce n'est pas facile.
C'est ça.
Ouais.
Et une dernière chose, s'il vous plaît, une dernière chose.
Désolée, je vais devoir passer à quelqu'un d'autre et on peut peut-être, pour laisser la chance aux autres aussi de poser des questions.
D'accord.
Merci.
Merci à vous.
So just to explain in English what we were just talking about, because this is an English session, but if there are any students that are more comfortable in French, feel free to ask your questions in French. The student was asking, they have applied for a permanent residency. They're still waiting for a response. Like Alexandra mentioned, there are major backlogs with IRCC right now. So he will need to apply for a study permit while he's waiting for a final decision on his permanent residency application. So if anyone else is in the same situation, it would be the same answer. And again, if you are applying for permanent residency, once you have the confirmation from IRCC that you have applied for PR, you can apply to change your tuition fees with InfoService. And again, as we mentioned earlier, if you don't have a study permit, you don't necessarily need to defer your session. You can study online virtually outside of Canada. But again, it is a personal choice. Some students will choose to defer if they're not able to come physically in person, you know, with time zones or the internet connection, depending on your personal situation, you might prefer to defer. But we have had a lot of students that have decided to stay and were able to successfully complete their term online as well. So there's a lot of students doing that. So the next,
maybe just mentioning the July 1st date. That's the date.
Yes. Yeah, as mentioned by Marc-André earlier, you can only apply for deferral as of July 1st and only if you've completed the conditions of your offer of admission. So you're not able to defer until that happens. So I'll ask one last question to Alex and then we'll move on to another section. Hello, I'm 17 and I'm not eligible for the vaccine. It was explained that we have to be fully vaccinated to enter Canada. No, you do not need to be fully vaccinated to enter Canada. How do I get a permit if I'm not vaccinated in this case? So you don't need to get a vaccine in order to get a permit. Josh, maybe you can just re-explain what we meant by vaccination in relation to quarantine.
Yeah, we do get this question a lot. And as Natalie said, you do not need a vaccination at this time to travel to Canada. But if you are fully vaccinated 2 weeks before you travel to Canada by a vaccine that's approved by Health Canada, and there's a list in the link there, then you should be eligible for a reduced quarantine. You will not need to book the mandatory 3-night airport hotel, and you will be able to leave quarantine as soon, so you can go to your final quarantine location, your residence, wherever you're staying, and you can leave quarantine as soon as you have a negative test result. So it just means you should have a shorter quarantine if you're fully vaccinated. We know that most people, including ourselves, can't be fully vaccinated at this time, so we understand. So in that case, you have to do the full 14 days quarantine. And as vaccines become increasingly available, fewer people will have to do the full quarantine. And was mentioned earlier, the good news is that everyone, once you arrive in Canada and you finish quarantine, everyone is eligible to be vaccinated here. So that's good news, and it's free.
Thank you, Josh. So I have another question for you, actually. So what is required to get accommodations, medical documents, or a high school reference? Oh, I don't know if it's accommodations in relation to quarantine or housing on campus.
Yeah, the person would need to clarify. I'm not sure. Nothing, in order to get the quarantine package that I was talking about, you just need to book online. There's no documents required. We have a link to that. So yeah, someone can clarify, whoever posted the question. Could be David here.
Yeah, I think it is David. So I'll unmute you, David, and you can go ahead.
Hi, sorry about that. I should have clarified. It was not in reference to quarantine. It was referencing getting housing. I think yesterday was the last day for the guaranteed housing. And I applied well before that, and I haven't heard anything back. And I was curious about what the problem might be.
Yeah, so there's no problem. We're in the regular delay. So the deadline for guaranteed housing was actually June 1st, and they're matching basically people to the different housing options. And you can hear back as far as end of June if you applied before June 1st. So the deadlines and kind of the flow of the process are all available on the website. So maybe Camilla or Mia, if you can just share the specific link to the deadlines for housing. For housing, you do not have any medical documents or high school references that are required. So I don't think that should be an issue. So there shouldn't be an issue. It's just regular delays in matching the students and assigning them to a room. I'm not sure if you had guaranteed housing. If you didn't have guaranteed housing, they're going to match everyone that did have guaranteed housing before moving on to those who didn't have guaranteed housing. So it would be indicated in your offer of admission if you did or didn't have that. So I don't know, your hand is still up, so I'll just unmute you quickly just in case you have any follow-up questions. No? Okay, I think you're good. Okay, perfect. So Josh, this is another question for you. So hi, does this mean that if we do our 3 days of quarantine in Toronto, for example, and our test results are negative, we are then allowed to fly to Ottawa?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So as soon as you test negative, you don't even have to wait for the 3 days. As soon as you test negative on your arrival test, you can proceed to Ottawa or elsewhere. You can use a plane, train, automobile. You can get someone to pick you up. You can use the subway. We don't recommend that you use public transit with lots of people. We recommend that you fly, but you're free to come however you want, as long as you proceed directly to your final quarantine location. You can't stop along the way. And before I forget, there was something else in the chat. I think Zainab mentioned something about being 17 years old. I do want to mention there's a few exceptions to quarantine. So if you're a minor, so under 18 years of age when you're traveling, you do not need to do the mandatory, and you're traveling alone, you don't need to do the mandatory 3-night hotel stay. You can proceed directly to wherever you're doing your final quarantine. The other exception that I can think of right now is if you've tested positive between 14 and 90 days before your trip, you don't need to book the the hotel, and you don't need to do the testing. You simply come to Canada, you go into quarantine, you spend 14 days in quarantine, and then you're finished. So there are a few exceptions, apart from people who will be fully vaccinated.
So I learned something new today, Josh. I didn't even know that. So we're all learning today together. So the next question is actually for a mentor. So Manal, the question is when to apply for the work program in the campus for the fall. So I'm thinking this is in reference to the work study program.
Yes, I think so too. First thing first, to be eligible to apply through the work study program, you need to fill the financial questionnaire. This is available in your Eurozone account. And once you do that, it just like asks you about some of your like personal information and financial situation. And I believe that the work study program, like the portal for the fall term, is going to open in the beginning of August. So in the beginning of August, you can check and then add your modify your resume, add it, and then you'll be able to see all the posts that are available for jobs on campus. And then you can just apply directly. And if you're selected for an interview, for example, they're gonna reach out to you or send you an email, for example. But yeah.
Thank you. Maybe I'll just add that Manal is actually hired through the work study program. So all the mentors are hired through the work study program. It's an excellent program. I actually did it when I was a student as well back in the day. So I do strongly recommend it to get some work experience on campus.
Could I just jump in about work authorization for international students? Yes.
Yes.
So we will be going into more detail about this during the orientation sessions, and we also have an information session specifically about work authorization that will be offered in September. But I just wanted to mention it really quickly. So your study permit does authorize you to work in Canada. When you're enrolled as a full-time student, it authorizes you to work 20 hours a week off campus, and it also allows you to work on campus and combine the off-campus work with the on-campus work. But one important note is that you cannot start working before you start your program. So if you arrive in August, you cannot start working until your classes start in September. So that is something that causes confusion. So you must have started your studies before you can start working in Canada, and you do need to be a full-time student as well. So if you're part-time, you cannot work. That's it.
Thank you, Alex. Another question for Manal. I'm just wondering if communication courses will be held offline this year. I'm a first-year undergrad student who is intending to enroll in the fall 2021 term, but I have heard that most first-year courses will only be available in synchronous. Could you please confirm this?
Okay, so actually I saw this question like way before, and then I already checked the courses based on the course sequence. So I can tell you for the fall term, there, like if you follow the course sequence for communication program, you'll find like one course that is totally like asynchronous, which means that the lectures are already pre-recorded by the prof, and then they're given in the beginning in an application called Virtual Campus, and you just like study on your own like rhythm. However, you may have like some assignments or some essays that are due like each week or bi-weekly, just so that the prof makes sure that you don't leave everything till the midterm exams. And there are some other options for totally like virtual classes. And there are also some hybrid courses. I've seen, for example, some courses where the lecture is virtual, but the DGD or like the discussion group is in person. And there are like some other courses that have different sections. Some of them are in person and some of them are virtual. So you have the choice to choose either like the virtual section or the in-person section.
Thank you, Manal.
No problem.
A few admission questions. So these will be for Marc-André. I'm wondering about the school transcripts that need to be sent to the school. Do I request my high school to send U Ottawa my transcript, or will that be done through WEC?
You have to, it's not done through WAC, so you can request your school to send the transcript directly to the university, or you can mail them in, as it was explained during one of the slides during the presentation. I hope that answers that question.
I do have a few more for you.
Yep.
So as an Indian CBSE student, I got a revised offer of admission without conditions because the exams got delayed and it got canceled. Do they still have to fulfill those conditions of percentage when they get the final result from the board? And then grade 12 is in parenthesis there.
Yeah, so for the CBSE students, there's a lot of things that are uncertain at this time. So the exams have been officially canceled. We've made unconditional offers based on mark sheets, marks, or on other types of transcripts that were available. Some conditions you will have to meet some of the conditions. For example, you will have to submit a proof that you obtained your high school diploma. So that's for certain. For final marks, if you're not receiving any other final marks, the decision will be based on the marks that we currently have. So we're not going to ask you for marks that are never going to be available, just so that's clear. I hope that answers the CBSE question, and that would be relevant as well for CISCE board in India, where the exams, the board exams have been canceled as well.
Okay. I already submitted my on-campus application, but I didn't hear back what can be done about this. So if that person could just specify which application, they might be talking about housing. So if you can just specify which application you're speaking about, we can maybe help you with that. And this is another admission. So in Turkey, we need to pass an exam, YKS, to attend any Turkish college. In my official offer from Ottawa, it was written that I should submit my YKS results by September 21st, but I have no idea what kind of a grade or result I'm expected to receive because it was not indicated in the offer.
Yeah, so the reason why we ask for the YKS results, it's not a sort of firm condition. It's just that we want to see these results. We're not asking for a specific result. We just want to have them on file for analysis sort of purposes internally. So if you're not writing the YKS exams, you don't have to submit this document. But if you are, we would appreciate if you would send the results to us. It has no, it does not affect your admission to the University of Ottawa. We don't require a specific score. We simply want the document on file to allow us to do some analysis further later during the year. That's the only reason why we asked for this document. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. So I'm going to take more general questions now. So I have in-person engineering lab this winter, but there is an online lab alternative for students who can't, but is there an online lab alternative for students who can't travel? So it depends on the lab. Some of them, especially first year courses, they do have a virtual lab option. They did purchase a virtual lab software. That being said, I don't know specifically which course you're speaking to. So whenever you're going again in the class details, you can click on the lab itself and see if the lab is given in person, hybrid, or completely online. If it does say in person, what you can do is email your faculty just to make sure that that there isn't an alternative option. And if not, what you can do, if you're not planning on traveling to Canada this winter, you can switch it out. Or because it is in the winter, you could wait until September, October and see how the situation is improving or not improving, and then make a decision based on that. And whenever you are changing your course enrollment, pro tip, do swap, do not delete and add, because if there's no way to add a course, then you've just deleted a course and you won't be able to get into another one sometimes. So always swap whenever you're making changes to your course enrollment. And Manal, I don't know if you have anything to add to what I just said, since you are an engineering student.
From what I know, just like because like as the student mentioned, like I enrolled to my classes as well, and like most of my classes are like the lecture is virtual and then the labs are in person. But from what I've heard, you just like need to, like if you're studying completely online, you just need to send emails to the profs, and then like see if there's like an accommodation or if they can like give the lab like virtually. If not, then I would say like if you're sure that you can't come to Canada for the fall term, then you can see with the academic advisor if they're like if you can change your course selection or things like that.
Yeah, and for engineering especially, I find the suggested course sequences are so strict. There's not a lot of electives. So for engineering students specifically, I would recommend having a conversation with an academic advisor if you're looking to modify your course sequence, just so that you have the least problems in finishing your studies on time as much as possible. And then the next question, is there any payment plan for the tuition fees? Yes, there is. So you do have to pay 50% before the deadline, so before October 1st, and then there's 25% installments, and that does need to be put in place before the deadline to pay tuition fees. So if you are already predicting having the need for a payment plan, if you just Google U Ottawa payment plans, they'll pop up and you can see your options, and Info Service can also explain it to you or answer any questions you might have about those as well. Can our accountant send tuition money from you 529 to CIBC directly? I'm not sure what 529 is, but basically if you have a bank account that is outside of Canada, you print the PDF, you go physically to your bank or online, because I know now there's virtual appointments, and then it's your bank that would transfer the money. I'm not sure if the accountant would have access to do something like that. Usually it is through your bank. That being said, if you do have any specific questions, again, I'm not sure what 529 is in your country, but you can also reach out to infoservice@uottawa.ca and they'll be able to look into it a little bit deeper for you. When the classes, including the in-person ones, start, I might still be in quarantine and may miss some of them. So will my classes be marked missed, or is it a valid excuse? So if you do have in-person courses and you need to miss a few classes because you're doing quarantine, I would recommend coming before the start of classes if possible, so you're not missing any in-person classes. That being said, it will depend on the course. So there are some courses, for example, that require 80% participation. So 14 days would not ruin your 80% participation. That being said, I would reach out to the professor, let them know what's going on, just inform them. And as much as possible, professors are trying to be flexible. They might ask you for proof, for example, so you might have to show like a receipt that you had paid for a hotel for quarantine, or that you had registered your quarantine plan in our registry. But usually it wouldn't upset the 80% requirement that some of the courses have. There's no course that requires you to attend 100% of courses because life happens and, you know, not always possible to attend every single class. And your professor might have alternative materials to provide for when you're in quarantine. So you can do things maybe offline, maybe a colleague can share their notes with you. So there's different things that you can do as well if you have to miss class. But again, try to arrive before courses begin if you are planning on quarantining, because you have to, I guess. Are there any resources for moving services from London, Ontario to Ottawa for international students during the pandemic? So there are no specific resources. I would say the resources that already exist out there. So if you just go on Google and you look at different moving services, it would be up to you to go on Yelp and look at reviews and see, are these people careful with my things? If you have a lot of fragile items, I would definitely look at reviews to make sure that they're not kind of half-assing it and they're really careful with your items. So that would be something that you could do independently. If you kind of have questions, you're not really sure how to go about it, you can reach out to an international mentor and they can help you find resources, but this is something that would be done as it's not related to university, but more so your personal life. And then last question here, my credits from Western University have not been transferred. Okay, so you're a transfer student from Western. Basically you have to request equivalencies. So if you've already been admitted at this point, you have to send your courses that you've completed at your other institution to your faculty, and they'll evaluate what the equivalency would be at U Ottawa, and then they would provide you with the equivalency. So I would still enroll for your courses as though you're not getting any equivalencies, and then as soon as you receive them, you can change your course selection. And I would do so as soon as possible, because course equivalency evaluations, they do take quite a bit of time, and each faculty has different requirements, but most of the time they'll ask for a full description. So if you have a syllabus, the number of hours, the number of credits, because it is a Canadian institution, though, they are used to having a bit more Canadian transfers, so it should be a little bit quicker than an international university where we might not get as many requests. So they already might have a bank of courses that we've previously given equivalencies for. And Marc-André, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Nope, your answer was spot on. It should be quite simple, actually. Yep.
Okay, so the next question is immigration. If most of my classes are virtual, do I have to travel to Canada, or can I stay in my country? So you don't have to travel, you can stay in your country. And Alex explained the exceptions that are currently in place, and they can also be found in the FAQ. And then the second question is, can I stay in my country of origin for the first 6 months and go to Canada after that 6 months?
Yes. So the only things that I would keep in mind are that travel restrictions can change at any time. So make sure to keep a lookout for that. And also, if you are traveling from a country that requires a medical exam, the medical exam results can only remain valid for 1 year. So depending on how long you postpone your travel, you may be required to have another medical exam before you travel to Canada. So keep that in mind. And then the last thing is the post-grad work permit eligibility. As you know, right now, only remote studies, online learning is acceptable up until the end of this year. So December 31st, 2021, we don't know yet beyond that. So that would be another thing I would just keep in mind. But yes, you're not required to travel to Canada. If you enroll in only online courses, for example, and you feel comfortable to follow those from your home country, you're definitely free to do so.
Thank you, Alex. So now I have a quarantine question. So where do we stay for the 14-day quarantine if we're going to residence, since we can't do our quarantine in residence?
That's a good question. I put a link in the chat, but the university offers a number of quarantine packages. You have to pay for this extra, unfortunately, but some of them are quite affordable compared to finding your own place. And there's a quarantine package available specifically to those moving into residence. Unfortunately, it's only available in July, and there's nothing we can do about that for the cheapest plan. However, and that's simply because there's no space. There are a couple of other quarantine packages which are available in August. So you can check out the website that I posted and then see the one that suits you, or find an Airbnb or your own place elsewhere. You don't have to do the university quarantine package if that's not suitable for you.
Great, thanks, Josh. This is from Manal. When should we apply for our student card?
Well, I can say from my personal opinion in that matter, I would say probably 2 weeks or 3 weeks before coming to Canada, just because you can do all of these steps online, and I really suggest doing it online for a number of reasons. For example, you can choose the picture you like. So I remember for some pictures taken for the UPass or things like that, it was so hot, and then from the waiting online, I was super sweaty, and the picture was ugly. But for the student card, you can choose the picture you like. Of course, it has to be in specific format, just to have your full face on it. But my colleagues can put the link for how to apply to the student card in the chat, and basically you just fill the form, and with your student number, full name, the picture, etc. And then once you receive an email saying that your student card is ready for pickup, you just go and pick it up. You need a document, like an official document with your picture on it. So for example, your passport, to be able to pick it up, but it should be good. And it won't take a long time if you apply for it online. So please do it online, just a few days or a few weeks before you come to Canada, and it should be it.
Thank you. And maybe just another detail, do not apply for it online until you are planning to physically come to Canada. Otherwise, it'll just kind of be sitting there. So yeah, just make sure that you're doing it 2 to 3 weeks before you're actually planning on physically coming to Ottawa. Another question for you, is there a list of in-person courses to be offered in September and which ones to be offered online? So how can you tell if the course is online or in person?
Okay, so I don't have an exact list for all the courses that are offered online or in person. However, what I would suggest is check your course sequence. So each program has a specific course sequence, and then once you check the courses, you can go to your Eurozone account under applications. There's an app called Enroll, and then you add your classes in there. And once you go to the class detail, like you fill the course code, you will see in the instruction mode if it's virtual, like web conference, or in person. Sometimes you see like if the course is given twice a week. If the course is hybrid, you can see like the first one, for example, on Monday, it's virtual, and then the second one on Wednesday is in person. So that means it's an hybrid type of classes. But yeah, like you can just check it out in Eurozone. However, what I would suggest is if you still didn't enroll in all of your classes, please send us an email to mentorio@uottawa.ca just so that we can assist you and help you enroll in the fastest way possible.
Thank you. So this is maybe an admission question for Marc-André. So I finished high school last year. I took a gap year and I didn't do any courses or attend any institution. During my application process, I already submitted my final transcripts of last year. And when I received my offer, there was no mention of the July 15th deadline. I don't believe the situation applies to me, but am I expected to send my final transcripts again, even though it was not mentioned in my offer letter?
It's a good question. I think the question was asked by Heshika, if I remember correctly. If you're in this situation, you've already completed high school, you have your high school diploma, it is possible that this condition is not, the condition of submitting your official transcript is not mentioned in your offer of admission. So do review your offer of admission just to make sure that that condition is not there. If the condition is not mentioned, and you already know that you've submitted the hard copies or the official transcript, then this does not apply to you. You are correct.
So I do have a follow-up question from, I think it's Jennifer from that came from Western. So if she does get credits, I'm wondering if I can maybe do one semester or continue with my second year.
Yeah, so ideally, you would receive your advanced standings before the courses start, or your transfer credits. So it is normal that at the time of admission, you are admitted in first year before the analysis of the courses you've completed at Western is done by the faculty. Once you've received that evaluation, they will inform you of how many transfer credits you are receiving and where you'll be progressing in your studies. So ideally, like Nathalie had explained earlier, you have to apply for these for the analysis of your transfer credits. And then when you get the answer, hopefully you get all the advanced standings that you were hoping to get, and then you get to pursue your studies in second year or so on. So at this time, it is normal if you're admitted in first year. Hopefully you get your answer soon for your transfer credits, your advanced standings, and so you can progress with your enrollment.
Yeah, thank you,
I hope
Marc-André.
that was clear. I don't know if, yeah.
This is for Alex, a bit of a long answer, I think. So since I have enrolled for all virtual classes for fall and winter, I'm planning to only come to Canada in fall of 2022. How many years of PGWP will I get?
Yeah, the answer is it depends, right? Because right now we don't know what IRCC will accept for winter 2020 beyond fall 2021. So I'm not able to get a definitive answer. And I also don't know the length of your program. But in general, I can say that the length of the postgrad work permit always aligns with the length of the program. So if your program of study is 2 years or longer, you're eligible for a 3-year work permit. That is the maximum validity you can get. If your program is less than 2 years, then you will be eligible for the same validity as the length of your program. So yeah, I hope that mostly answers the question, but we don't know what facilitative measures will be announced beyond the end of this year. So I'm not able to give you a definitive answer.
Thank you, Alex. So for Josh, are there restrictions when I make my own quarantine plan?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the person means. However, you can make your quarantine plans anytime. However, the rules can always change. So we don't recommend that you book things too far in advance. We will review your quarantine plan. The government has a helpful website to assess your own quarantine plan. So if you're just wondering if your quarantine plan is good enough, answer the questions on their website. And I think we'll have a link. We have a link within our register itself. If you have questions, you can email us. However, we don't really recommend that you submit your quarantine plans to us until you're ready to travel to Canada, until you're about to buy your plane ticket. For the quarantine packages, we won't book them actually until you have your plane ticket. So you can't do it too far in advance. Keep in mind that you share your details with us, but you also share your details with the government using an app called ArriveCan. And I forget exactly, I think you can submit your quarantine plan details up to 90 days in advance or well in advance. So it's up to you when you make your quarantine plan. But as I said, or one of the most important things is the rules can change. So be prepared to change your quarantine plans, the length of quarantine, the testing, all those things have changed over the last few months and could change again in the future.
Thank you, Josh. So another question, how do tuition fees change once our co-op term starts? So when you're in your co-op term, so for example, if you're in most programs at the undergraduate level, you're going to start your first year, do your second year, and then in the summer of your second year, that will be your first co-op placement. So again, this is for most programs, but not all. And for that summer, instead of paying tuition fees, you're going to only pay the co-op term fee. And that information can be found on the website of the co-op office. So maybe Camilla or Mia, if you want to add the link directly to that information, that would be greatly appreciated. And I have one last question for Marc-André. So after receiving my offer, I noticed that the letter includes a condition that I was supposed to send my final transcript. I've already sent it, but the condition is still there in my portfolio.
Yeah, I think this question was asked by Zainab. It's probably due to the fact that the transcript that you sent was not a hard copy. A hard copy is what we call an official final transcript. And so you can ask your high school to send the admissions office an official final transcripts, or if you've received the copy of this, or a hard copy of your final transcript, you can send it in by mail. So I suspect that this is the situation at this point, is that you sent a copy of the final transcript. And what we need is a real hard copy of this transcript. So Zainab, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. So that actually concludes all of our questions. So if there's no last questions, so Zainab said, I asked my high school to send it and it was official. What is your mailing address if I can send it there? So the mailing address is indicated on your offer of admission directly.
Yeah, and what I would add, Natalie, is that please note that it could take some time for the transcript to actually get to the university. And we do get a lot of mail. So at this time of year, a lot of these documents do come in by mail, and it can take some time for our colleagues at the admissions office to open all the envelopes, scan all the documents and make sure they're in your file. So do allow some time at this point. The easiest way, Zainab, would be an email from your high school at this point. I would not ask that they send another copy by mail. Let's just give it some time. So on the other hand, maybe ask them to send an email.
Okay. I have one last question here for Josh. How long does it take for the quarantine support team to evaluate the quarantine plan when they fill in the form?
Sorry, I hope that's not coming from Manal, because someone named Manal may have submitted a quarantine plan some time back and it hasn't been evaluated. We try and do them normally within a week. However, lately, and I'm sorry about this if your name isn't Manal or is Manal, or you're someone else on this chat and it's taken longer, it's simply because we've been changing some of our processes and our forms. And we know that the trips are in August, so we haven't prioritized some of the trips that are later on this summer. So I'm sorry for that. We aim to turn them around in a week. You do not need your quarantine plan to be approved by the university. You must register your quarantine plan so that we can support you in the process. However, if something happened and your plans changed and you're coming the next day, don't worry about it. You can still come to Canada. You don't actually need approval from the university to come to Canada. You just need to register your quarantine plan with the university. So if you do it at the very last minute, don't worry about it. And as I said, the government now has a very good site to assess your own quarantine plan. So if you've assessed it yourself and it looks good and you're traveling the next day, don't worry about it. But please register with us. It's very helpful if you register. You must register. And the main reason is that we can then support you. A lot of students have challenges along the way, and we learn some things in supporting other students. So if you register, it's much easier for us to help you. And for those named Manal and others, we will get back to your review very soon.
Yeah, I do confirm there are sometimes some technical difficulties, and it's super helpful to have Josh and Jason help you. So definitely fill out the registry, because it speeds things up because they have direct access to certain employees of the government. So we're going to take this last question. So Marc-André, I have not sent any official transcript to UOttawa. My admission offer also does not mention any requirement of sending any official transcript. Do I have to send the hard copy of the official transcript to UOttawa, and what is the deadline of sending the same?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Saad. I think it's, again, important for you to review your offer of admission. If that condition is not mentioned on your offer or in your UOZone account, then it is not mandatory. But do double check just to make sure that it's not either on your offer of admission or on your UOZone account. If you want to just be safe, you can ask your school to send the admissions office an official transcript if that's a possibility. So nothing is stopping you from sending it, but if it's not required, then the decision is really up to you. So Saad, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Marc-André. So I think we're going to conclude here. So if you have any further questions, definitely reach out to us. We are on summer hours, so we are open Monday to Friday, 9 to 3:30. Usually it's 9 to 4:30, but with the summer, we do have reduced hours. We're going to enjoy a bit of the sun because, you know, in Canada, the summers are quite short. And our phone number is 613-562-5847. We're not physically in the office right now, so if you do leave a message, we will get back to you by email, just a side note. And it is uointl@uottawa.ca. That's for immigration, health insurance, to reach out to the quarantine team, to myself. If you are reaching out to, for example, the mentors, it would be mentorio@uottawa.ca. They also have the possibility of booking appointments with them online. Once you have your UOttawa email, you can do it yourself. Before you have access to it, you do have to send them an email to book it manually. And our website, international.uottawa.ca. Again, we have a lot of FAQs. So we have a health insurance FAQ, we have an immigration FAQ, We have all the quarantine information on there, and we continuously update it. It's been constant changes this year, but we're trying to keep the information as up to date as possible, and the date of the update will be at the bottom of the page as well, if ever you're wondering. So I'd like to thank every panelist, Manal, Alexandra, Marc-André, Joshua, and then also our colleagues in the back end there, so Camila, Mia, and then we also have Phil and Martin who joined us, as well as Rebecca. And I forget the last name, I'm so sorry.
Marianne, thank you, Marianne.
Marianne, thank you so much. Apologies. So I hope that your answers were given today to your questions, that you're off on the right foot. This is only our second session together other than the study permit session. So there's going to be many sessions throughout the summer, not only with us, but with other teams on campus. So again, don't hesitate to reach out. We're there to support you. I know it's a bit of a strange year this year, but you know, we're getting way used to this virtual thing. Things are improving in Canada as well. So we hope to see you very soon. We will be returning to the office as well very soon, so maybe even person. So enjoy the rest of your day or night. And again, we will be sending you the PowerPoint, the recording, and a survey follow-up email. So if you have any suggestions on how to improve or what other things we can do to support your transition and your pre-arrival period, that is much appreciated. Would anyone else like to say anything before I conclude this session? No? Okay, so yeah, that's it. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, evening, or night. Goodbye.